Hello, folks. Thanks for joining us today for the Farm and Math the Business Program Huddle. We are going to wait a few more minutes to let everyone else join in. Till then, feel free to submit your questions into the Q&A area. We will not be looking at the chat to see the questions, but you are more than free to use the chat to interact with each other. And yeah, we will begin in 2 minutes. Yes, we will start and more people can join us as we continue doing it. So we have two students here who have said yes to being our lovely panelist. I will let them introduce themselves first, and then we will start picking up the questions that you're submitting. Thanks. Take it away, folks. I'll stop sharing my screen.
Yeah, sounds good. I'll just turn on my camera here. Yeah, my name is Ethan, and I'm going into my 4A term at Farm and with a minor in economics. I can go more about my co-op experience as we go on, but I'll just pass it over to Lucy.
Hi everyone, my name is Lucy. I am going into my 4A term of Farm. I've done 6 co-op terms, and I can go into my co-op terms later if anyone has any questions about it. But I guess we will be starting to answer all of your lovely questions.
Well, till I figure out the technology. Yeah, the first question is, I'm still trying to figure out the technology a bit, but what is the transition from university to high school to university like, especially for math?
Yeah, I can sort of go first on this one. It really depends on sort of the school you came from. For me, I sort of came from a more of a sporty school, so you might think the transition would be even harder. So you just really fundamentally have to have good time management skills, because if you have that, you can balance out your math courses and the other courses you're taking, as well as still maintaining a social life and joining clubs, etc. So just the tradition, how I transitioned was just maintaining. I had good time management skills back in high school and just carrying on that forward. Now, in terms of the difficulty level, sure, some courses were harder than others. For example, Math 135 was pretty challenging. It was algebra. And because I never seen those type of questions, I never really had to do proof back in high school. But if you're coming from an international school, I know they had a bit an easier time than I did for that course. But again, it doesn't matter. Sure, I said it matters where the school you came from in terms of maybe the level of questions or difficulty of questions you've seen before, but you can get really caught up to speed. And I'm still in this program, so anyone, well, I'm not that dumb, but anyone can sort of get through with some good time management skills.
And
what about you, Lucy?
Yeah, I was just gonna add on to that. So I came from a self-directed learning Catholic high school, and having to not learn about religion but only focus on math was something that was really, really different. I think the biggest challenge was that the math courses that I've taken in high school did not fully prepare me for university level, just because the concepts are so different. The way that the class is taught is so different. Like, I remember in high school, the teacher would give us like practice problems, we would go through them, and then we would know all the concepts. Here, it's more like in class, the professors will mainly focus on the theory, and it's up to yourself to do any practice questions and to review any material after class. So, as someone who did not have that habit from high school, I had a little bit of time struggling with that. But eventually, as I went on throughout my years at Waterloo, I began to learn that it's something that I have to work on. And as Ethan has mentioned, the material is different. Math 135, it was like it was proof techniques, and it was something I never learned about in high school. And so I really struggled with that course. For Math 137, although it was calculus, I let my guard down thinking it was just calculus, but you go way into the theory instead of the calculations. And so I found it really challenging.
I can definitely agree with Math 137 right there. Moving to the next question. So, what made you choose farm as your major? You can both answer as you like.
Yeah, well, going into the university application and applying to different schools, I did a wide variety. However, I narrowed it down to farm just because I wanted something untraditional. So you're not going to some basic commerce degree that any school offers. It's more quantitative focus. So I think you'll have it definitely the way the world's going in terms of quant and data. It's a very good program to get foundational knowledge in those fields and get experience into more side of computer science and combining that with finance. So that's one of the reasons I chose. And in addition to that, because it is so quant heavy, it's math heavy. I know a lot of people, including myself, who do minors to sort of supplement to get more. If you're interested in economics or if you're interested in actuarial science, people do minors with our program, which is quite frequent. I know a lot of people, as I said. So I think it's just a great program to get the fundamental knowledge into what's going to be useful in the future, but as well as you have flexibility with having a lot of minors because you have a lot of courses in stat, you have a lot of courses in ActSci, and then you have enough in econ to do an econ minor easily. So, yeah.
And then I can talk a little bit about why I chose farm. So, when I was applying for universities, I always know that I want to go to Waterloo because of the co-op program and because math was a subject that I really enjoyed and it's very practical in finding a job later. I wanted to pick a program in the math faculty. And so, because I also enjoyed business at the same time, so I was looking at math business programs. And then farm just kind of stood out to me because it's something that I've never heard about. It's like a business and yet it's like math, and as Ethan said, it's like you can combine it with like a lot of different minors. And then I eeny meeny miny mold basically on all the programs. But then in the end I decided to go with farm despite like randomly picking one because it does sound very interesting, and it's supposed to help you prepare for your CFAs, which is supposed to be a really prestigious like certification you can get. So that's why I decided to go with farm.
So you both touched on that how farm allows you to have a lot of flexibility in terms of minors or with other things. Have you both decided if you're going to do any minors? If yes, what are you planning to do minors in?
Yeah, I can just expand a little bit more on my econ minor. So yeah, I'm taking one right now. The course load, you just have to take a couple, I think maybe 2 or 3 extra courses. And sort of fortunately, with the pandemic, I've been able to sort of get all my courses in. I've done 6 courses for the past couple of terms, and I did a course over my work term. So I pretty much got that out of the way. And just a little bit more about my reasoning behind that, supporting what I've already said. I just thought farm a little bit more quantitative than maybe I was thinking of. However, I was supplementing with a lot of these econ courses, which I can apply to my job or just even investing on my own and that sort of things and the clubs I'm involved in. So it was very applicable, and it was definitely be handy while I go forward. And it sort of matches out with a balances with other more traditional business degree programs where they have more of these econ courses. So that was really the reason I took it. And as I said, and you could say this about AXI, you could say this about stats. I know a lot of people who do double majors, minors. This program is really flexible, that you can do pretty much anything your mind is content with.
So I wanted to do a statistics minor, but I accidentally took a course that's like an anti-requisite of one of the other courses I can do in a statistics minor, and it wouldn't count towards it. So unfortunately, I can't do the statistics minor, but I believe you only need to take 3 extra courses, which can easily be done over co-op, especially in like a online school setting. And it wouldn't be like a lot of extra work for you to get like a statistics minor with a farm degree.
That's good. So obviously, like Waterloo is known for its co-op program. A lot of people come here because we have such a great program. What do the co-op positions look like in your first or second year? How did you prepare for those? And any tips that students should look into when they're going into their first co-op term?
Yeah, so for first co-op terms, really, and everyone sort of agrees with this, is mainly just finding you first. Now, it might not be very luxurious or something you want to be in long term. However, farm students get into a wide range of co-op positions as you get older. And I can speak more to that maybe a little bit later. But for first years, like financial analysts at banks or at government, or even at just a regular company, let's say, uh, I know people who worked at Pepsi and all these companies. So you can really get anything in terms of finance focus within these different organizations. So there's not much limitation there. Whereas if you were, let's say, an AFM student, which is the accounting and financial management, those people mainly go for accounting designations. And then sure, some of them can go more into finance as well. But for the first one, farm is usually very flexible into the different. Now, in terms of how you prepare and then what can make you stand out is just the clubs you're on. Obviously, grades, I would say, matter first couple of years, first year or two, just because they don't have as much to go on because you probably don't have much work experience. So it does matter. As long as it's above like a 80, you should have nothing to worry about. And then, as I was saying, extracurriculars, join clubs, join FARMSA, UWFA. There's a whole bunch of clubs that you can be a part of, and that's definitely helped me secure my first one because it was stuff I can talk to about in terms of experience that I've had and my interests. Because if you don't have any work experience, like you never had a summertime job before, or it's really hard to think of things to sell yourself, and that's what you're trying to do in these interviews. So I really just try your best with school. You know, sometimes you may not like a certain course and you might not do too well. Don't let it drag you down. Just do your best, join clubs, and you can definitely network with people who are older and they can definitely provide you more advice. And sort of that's what I did. I joined FARMSA and I met a great person there, and he was helping me how to go through this co-op process. And I recommend you guys doing the same.
I can talk a little bit more about the positions I had for my first and second co-op term. So for my first co-op term, I did not have that much experience. The only experience I had was like a summer job that I worked 6 weeks for at the Royal Ontario Museum. And so the first co-op that I got was a marketing and operations position for a startup where I basically marketed their social media as well as packed orders because it's an e-commerce company and responded to customer inquiries. And my second co-op term was like significantly more relevant and I guess in a way better than my first co-op term. I worked as an internal auditor for the Ontario Treasury Board Secretariat, and from my experience, if you've done any projects or like some either group projects or individual projects throughout your courses at Waterloo, you can always put that on your resume. Like just list out a like a few bullet points on what you did, how it's significant, and if it's like a group project, you can always put like teamwork and leadership on your resume for those projects. And then another thing, it's trying to remember. I had it in my head, it's fleeing. I don't remember. I will, if I remember, I will talk about it later.
No worries. Moving on to we've like kind of talked a bit about academics and co-op, and just like general like math specific like opportunities to get involved. What are general like clubs on campus? What's like social life like? How can you like kind of find that work-life balance at Waterloo? Because it's said to be that we have, especially in math, that we have a really hard academically focused life.
I can speak to it first because it looks like Ethan's having some connection issues. So, when I was on campus, I volunteered for Math Soc. Every year, Math Soc will have a lot of different volunteering positions. And I remember one term I volunteered as a finance director where I counted the till at the end of the day for Math Soc and deposited the money at the bank and conducted daily reconciliation at closing of the till. I know there are tons of opportunities to get involved. I believe there are over 100 clubs that is being provided by VUSA. So if you have like some sort of really niche interest, there's always a club for that. And if there's no club, you can always submit an application to create a club. As for trying to balance your school and social life, I'd say first is you need to, I guess, time manage really well. So you want to set aside specific time just for work. You want to focus entirely on your work and not think about any social or like any clubs. And then once you have done that, you can delegate like the leftover time that you're not working to anything like hanging out with friends or going to like attend any club meetings. Another thing is that generally, because I know my term might be academically heavy or not, that helps me to decide what clubs and what volunteer opportunities I should get myself involved in. So if I'm faced with a really academically challenging term, I tend to I tend to join less activities, and so I would just typically do like those 1 day volunteering events where you show up and you volunteer and you're done. And then that doesn't require a lot of time commitment. Whereas if I have a term that I don't have a lot of academic responsibilities, I'll join something that's more time consuming. And I remember the point from earlier. So, as farm students, we have to do this stock track trading challenge thing where you are given $1 billion, I believe, in virtual money, and you have to trade in stocks, options, and stuff like that throughout your 5 undergrad years at Waterloo. And that is a really good thing to put on your resume. You can talk about if you're trying to go into trading co-ops. You can talk about all the trading strategies you've done. You can talk about kind of like what you have invested in, what are your portfolio returns, and everything like that.
Yeah, I can sort of, hopefully the connection's better now. But just, yes, continuing to go on about different clubs on campus. And I'm personally involved in a lot of these. So if you ever want to join and you're curious about how to join, I can definitely try to connect you guys with the right people in order to join the clubs. So, for example, personally, I'm sort of the head of, well, not this specific term, but UW FarmSA. I'm very much a part of UWFA, which is the University of FarmSA Finance Association. And then I'm on some other investing clubs that are external of Waterloo. They're intercollegiate clubs, so a bunch of universities join, and that one's called Invest Insights. And all these clubs, really, you can look at it in two ways. And I sort of use this as sort of my social life. because yeah, it can get very busy with courses, and you're like, oh well, I have to do courses, I have to do clubs, and I have to go have a social life with friends. Well, I sort of try to combine those two, social life and then clubs, and it makes it a lot easier because a lot of really, I think about it now, the people I have my courses with and I talk to very often is people I've met in these clubs. So it's sort of best of both worlds to join those extracurriculars and so that helps with balancing sort of social life with school as well. Yeah, and I'll sort of just leave it at that.
Perfect. I do gotta say we have some pretty niche clubs at Waterloo. We have a cheese club where people just sample new cheese, I believe, every term. But yeah, moving on. What has been your favorite course so far at Waterloo and why?
Um, in terms of my favorite course, I think my favorite course so far has been, I'd say Math 136. It might surprise a lot of people because it's one of the core math courses and it's very challenging, but that course basically is an introduction to linear algebra, which is a concept that I have never learned about before in high school. And I found it really, really interesting. And it, like, throughout the weeks, like, as the material got harder, it kept challenging me. And it made me fall in love with math again after my first 1A term where I got destroyed by Math 135.
Yeah, well, math based, I was a big fan of CO250, which a lot of people are not. That's usually one of the hardest courses from what I've heard. And yeah, well, it depends. Yeah, I guess you all figured it out eventually with CO250, but I really liked that because it was very applicable, not to jobs, but I could visualize the concepts and be like, oh, how could you use this in a business? So that was fun. But not non-math focused courses, I would definitely say probably COM 321, which is intermediate accounting for finance. So any of the stuff that is econ or finance related, I sort of love. So yeah.
Nice. Next question is about what's your favorite spot on campus to study?
Okay, so contrary to popular beliefs, my favorite spot to study is the DC basement in the group study area where there's like this long table and then people just come and go during class time and they just sit there. They might be chatting with friends or they might be studying. Because for me personally, I can't study in silence. It just bothers me. And I also find it like a really great place to see a lot of my friends and we study together and then sometimes that actually helped me focus a lot better. A secondary favorite spot would be the EV3 Environment 3. It has these study rooms that you can book as well as a group study area and it has like an amazing view on the third floor. So, and not a lot of people know about it, so it's generally really, really quiet. So, when we are back on campus again, I really recommend you to check that out.
Yeah, a lot of people have a favorite place, but for me, it's really about convenience. I'm not don't care too much about where it is, but if I have a course that's say over by DC, I'm going to study in DC. So wherever it's sort of most convenient for me, I go to. But that being said, in terms of where I probably studied the most, it is more on that side. So MC, I've studied a lot at. Even in M3, there's a couple places I like sitting where there's not a lot of people. And even if I'm not writing notes in M3, there's a couple just lounge chairs that you can. There's no real tables, but you can just take out your laptop and study in M3. It's very quiet. But yeah, M3, MC, fourth floor, fifth floor. There's these tables there. Yeah, those are my favorite places to go in. And DC, not the basement area or the downstairs level, just the main floor, just because that's where it's more singular and you don't have to deal with loud noises with the where the group study is downstairs is.
I'm gonna chime in here with a place which I don't think any of you have ever been to because it just opened, the SLC Pack Expansion. That place was under construction for nearly 4 years. It's finally finished. It's a beautiful building. The amount of sunlight that comes into that building makes me happy whenever I'm just roaming through the halls. So I'm really looking forward to studying there. Do check it out once you're on campus, folks. Next question is, how are online courses, like the courses you have taken, because you both have taken in-person and online courses, how have they differed? How has your preparation for exams or assignments or just like studying differed for these?
One big difference is that one's online and you have to physically go to a location and get taught by a professor. Most of the online courses are asynchronous, which means the professors pre-record their lectures and you watch them on your own time. So I think online courses require more self-discipline than in-person ones, because in-person ones, you have a set time that you can go to sit in a class and listen to the professor deliver their material for the week. So that's the biggest difference. Another thing is that with online courses, all of a sudden assignments are worth a lot more than exams and midterms, whereas on campus, it's mainly exams and midterms that make up bulk of your grade. So you will have to put in a lot more time to make sure your assignments are really good and that you are getting good grades on your assignment in order to make sure you're getting a good grade on the overall course. Another, I guess, difference with online and in person is that you lose a lot of the opportunities before class or after class where you just chat with your classmates, or you just chat with the person next to you, or you do like clicker participation. You're using your clicker and just participating actively in class. With online classes, you don't have that. You just listen to the lecture and you review the material and you basically leave that material until you have to study for exams for it. And one last difference is that for online classes, a lot of the exams are open book because the professors know that even if they make it closed book, and people might open their book anyway just because it's in an online setting. And so I've found that some of the online exams are a little bit harder than I think they would have been for in person. But these are some of the key differences that I've noticed between online and in person.
Yeah, it sort of really depends on the type of person you are. Now, sure, there's nothing wrong with having professors and you actually have to go to their lectures, and some of them can be quite fun and make the course a lot easier to understand. But I'm also of the person that I love studying on my own. So regardless if there's a professor or not, I usually read the textbook on my own. And it's sort of the same thing with online. That's what you have to do, whether you're watching lectures or reading the textbook or doing questions. And so I really enjoyed it. Plus, you can save a lot of time on not having to move around between lecture classrooms and going across campus or even commuting. And then if you're living at home as well, it's a lot easier in terms of not a lot of sort of, you're living with other people, possibly your parents, and they can definitely help out with a lot of the things that you would have to do on your own in person. So there's a lot of time saving, which then can be devoted to studying. So overall, it really, sure, you might have a little bit of a hard time grasping the concept of online learning, and sure, you may have done it in high school, but it'll probably be completely different, more structured, I would say, at university. So there's pros and cons of both. Would I say I prefer one or the other? I would say, like, I'm doing online again this term, even though I didn't really have an option to go back in person. I don't think none of the fourth year students really had a choice. But yeah, no, I did, and probably Lucy as well. We did 2 years pretty much of in person. So it's not like I would prefer it being in person, just because, like, what's the point of university? You need to be on campus. Like, it is just weird to have your whole university career online. So it's bittersweet, but it pros and cons.
Well, Hoping for the in-person winter 2022, folks here.
Yeah.
Next question, like I know you touched a bit about time management and stuff, but what do you think about working part-time during your first year? Would you say it's doable with coursework and extracurriculars?
Well, I don't know to speak, but yeah, I didn't really have any part-time positions. I know people who have, and they've managed, so it is doable. However, I guess it just really depends on who you are, and if you have great self-discipline and you can balance everything. Now, in terms of like clubs, like sure it's yeah, I'm not even going to compare that to a part-time job, so I'll leave it as that.
I'm going to recommend, if you're going to work part-time, I'm going to recommend hold off for 1A and see like how well you adjusted to university in 1A before deciding whether or not you are going to work part-time in 1B. I know a few of my friends did part-time work, and as Ethan said, like it really depends on the person and how well they time manage and how well they are studying the materials. And I did like a really part-time, very like I think it's like 1 hour per week thing on campus. And that was like doable. But if it's like a part-time job where you have to give in like 15 hours a week, then I'd say wait until 1B and see how well you are adjusting to university before making that decision.
Um, I guess I am actually qualified to answer this question because I do work part-time on campus. I would kind of agree with what Lucy said here. It's like wait for your don't work it unless you absolutely have to in your 1 year term because it's an adjustment. The amount of time and effort that goes into just transitioning into the university, trying to figure out the resources that you have on campus, it's a lot, and working at that time can be difficult. I started working part-time in my 1B term. Even then, like I do know like my academics, like my grades did dip a bit, but it was a balance of trying to balance both worlds at the same time. So it's definitely possible. It just takes some, as I guess Ethan said, good self-discipline and making sure that, like, if you're doing a job that you like, it's much more easier. And I would say try and find a job on campus instead of like outside campus because usually that saves you traveling to the job. And also, it just help because it helps with your schedules because the people on campus they know you're a student first and an employee second, so they are always willing to work around your schedules, especially around exam time when things happen. So that's just a better way to find a part-time job on campus. The next question we have is where can they go for academic help? Like if they're struggling with a course, what resources they have present on campus to help them with that.
Yeah, I can. I'm not going to answer this question. I know there's a bunch of links, and Waterloo does a great job in terms of different sources you can go to in terms of professors, and even there's different, not necessarily clubs you call them, but I guess just after school almost programs that you could definitely seek help at. And I actually used a couple of those for some math courses. But predominantly, and I'll be honest, but usually friends just reaching out. And if they did that, maybe you're doing the course together, or if someone did a course before you. Now, since you're going to first year, you'll all be doing it together. So just you don't have to know 20 different people, but if you have a good one or two people that you know, and you can just sort of ask any questions to them. That's sort of what I've done. And going back to being quite frank, maybe once in my whole university life, I've asked a prof a question. And that's sort of just me personally. Profs are very open to help. And I know a lot, there's, again, depending on who you are, I know people who went every single day. And the profs are a great source of information to definitely early on too with some of these math courses. If you don't understand it early on, it can be quite challenging later. So the sooner you better to seek help. But I was fortunate where I had a couple friends where we sort of could help each other out if we have any questions.
Your number one resource once you get to being an upper year student would definitely be your professors, just because like they know everything. Well, they know most things about what they're teaching, and they are the most qualified in helping you, because I found that sometimes, even though I ask my friends, they tell me like they are not sure either, and then they tell me like an answer that they're not sure about, and in the end we both misunderstand the concept. So that was not fun. But in your first and second year, there are these tutorial centers, both ran by Waterloo residences, though I'm not sure if it's going to be ran this year, and ones that are ran by the Faculty of Math, where there are going to be specific tutors on site, and then they can help you with like a specific course. So once school starts, your professors will give you more information about these tutorial centers, how you can access them, as well as like what time slot do they offer help for like whatever course. I know for myself, in my first year, I spent most of my time in my 1A term in the residence tutorial center. I would go like 5 days a week or 4 days a week after school, and then I would just sit there while I try and work out some of the assignments or like the concepts that I didn't understand with my friends. And I would ask the tutors questions, and the tutors are there, they're being paid to help you. And another great source would, like even said, would be your friends, but you gotta use that, I guess, cautiously. Don't accidentally plagiarize, don't copy their answers, especially for assignments. Even if you change up the wording, they'll still be able to detect it, so do not violate section 71.
Yes, Policy 71 is a really fun read. You should definitely do that. Um, the next question was going to be about, you have like CS courses in your first year, you have some proofs, some calculus courses in your electives. Do all of them take the same amount of effort, or like how do you try to figure that out?
I can go first. Um, I would say they don't all take the same effort, just because there's some courses that may, for whatever reasons, you find them more difficult. So, for example, and I think both Lucy and I already alluded to a bit of this, but like I sort of, I was having a challenge with algebra, but I'm pretty good at calculus. So obviously, I'm going to spend most of my time with algebra versus calculus. And then for that CS, depending if you take CS 135 or 115, which is basically CS 135, is you can still take that as a farm student, but it's pretty much the CS, their basic course that they take, and then whereas CS 115 is the intro, and it's slightly not necessarily easier, I guess you could say it is, but it's just different. And that I enjoyed that course very much as well. So I didn't require all that much effort compared to algebra. So it depends on who you are, as I've sort of said for a lot of these questions, but yeah, not necessarily all the same.
So I think in your first term, you take Com 101, a communications course, lovely Math 135, 137, and either CS 115 or 135. I would say your communication course would take the least amount of effort. And then I think the next one might be Com 101, though I've never taken Com 101, so I don't think I'm qualified to say that. But personally, I found in my first term, I dedicated a lot of my time to Math 135, which I actually dropped in the middle of the term because if I didn't drop it, I was going to fail it. That was fun. And I spent a lot of time on CS 135 just because I've never done any CS courses before. So it was all like new concepts to me, and I don't know why I chose CS 135. The assignments were really long, and I did not have a good time with that. But I think it's all depends on like what you're strong at. I know some of my friends, they like Math 135 and Math 137 was a breeze for them. And then they just like spend a lot of time on like their communications course instead. So it really depends on where your strong suit is at and like what you're not good at.
Just actually follow up on that. Yeah, then you always hear about Math 135 and all these other courses, but yeah, there's some people who take the enriched courses. I think that's what they call them. So I know a couple of people of mine, not necessarily all farm students, but in other programs of math, they take 145 and 147 or whatever the course code is. And yeah, those that's crazy stuff. It's already hard enough as it is to take us, but there's people that can do it. So I wouldn't if you're that person who excels at these things, sure, you can challenge yourself.
What were you the most nervous about coming into your first year? How did the thing you were worried about actually turn out?
Yeah, there's pretty much two, I would guess, two big areas people that are concerned about. One is social life, and two is just your academics. Now, for me, I was fortunate enough because I was living with people I knew from high school. So I wasn't too worried about social life because I had sort of three close friends I already knew, and I would meet people at clubs. So I guess just the academics, and in particular that one course, the algebra course, where I was struggling. I did well in it eventually, but yeah, the midterm was maybe the worst mark I've seen in my whole university and even my whole high school experience. I hadn't got it such a low mark. I still passed, but just to give you more context. But yeah, so I was pretty concerned about that course because it was like, if I fail this, I don't even want to think about what's going to happen. So I was worried about that. But if you're that type of person where you're more worried about social, just some advice I would have is just joining clubs. And since you are on campus, hopefully you gain some of that experience in terms of meeting people up, maybe just locating similar people in the math building, because I would assume they're math students. Now, just a little bit of a disclaimer, because I'm sort of aware with all these things, but with clubs, usually I'm pretty sure most of them are going to be online still. So it might be a little bit difficult in terms of if you think you're going to meet up with people. There will be people I know that are in these clubs that are on campus. However, just for health and safety reasons, I think they're, and depending on where, a lot of people are not even in Waterloo. I'm not in Waterloo. So they're just going to have them virtually. That being said, just pay attention to Facebook if you're interested in them, because, or even reach out to me or Lucy, or anyone pretty much upper years that could sort of redirect you to these clubs to help with it.
So I was not worried about the academic side, and now that I think about it, I should have been worried about the academic side. But I was worried about how I'm gonna get along with my roommate because we will be living in the same room. But Waterloo residents actually did a really good job in matching you in the same room with like a roommate that you will actually get along. So if you have a roommate and you are living in residence, I don't think you should be too worried about that. They have some sort of algorithm that also has some sort of human touches to it, and they match you with like a roommate that usually you will get along with. It's like a magical system that nobody understands. Another thing I was worried about is I've never learned how to cook. I don't have life skills. I don't know how to do I know how to do laundry, but I was worried about how to do laundry in university setting. So it's all sorts of like these life skills side of it. And I found that by living in residence, it's pretty much taken care of for me because I lived in a traditional style residence. I don't have to cook. I'll just get a meal plan, and they have like the easy walk card tapping laundry machines that are available for you to use, and all you have to do is like put in the detergent and make sure you clean out the lint while after you're done the dryer. So I found that living in residence in my first year helped to prepare me to move out eventually on my own off campus.
Yeah, just actually supporting that, because I sort of had the same concerns too. I didn't really know how to do laundry. I didn't know how to, because it was the first time. But after about 2 weeks, though, all that stuff you get used to it. So it might be anxiety at first, but everyone does it. You're not alone. You're not the only one it's the first time for. So yeah, you might just feel anxious at first, but it quickly goes past. And then you're like, oh, I have bigger things to worry about, like exams and stuff like that.
So you just mentioned anxiety, like basic anxiety, like a big part of being into university is living independently, taking care of yourself. Did you struggle with that? What were the things that you kind of did for your own mental and physical health and just to relax?
Yeah, so a couple things. Now, in terms of just trying to think back, God, I can't believe it was probably like three years now since I was in first year. Um, I don't remember like episodes or anything like that, but things that I did. and I'm not going to repeat what I've been saying with club, with those extracurriculars I mentioned, but I like playing sports. So I joined an intramural, yeah, not the professional one, but just a intramural for soccer. And I did that a couple of times. So it was just very relaxing, as well as if there was, I was at CLV, so I had to pretty much go to V1 and Rev, where they usually had a bunch of events where you can meet people in your year. So you could go to those and just hang out, or just chilling with people and watching sports, or there's so many other things that you can do besides sports. But yeah, so I sort of just did that, because if you are devoured and all of your attention's focusing on a course that you're struggling with, then you might go into a sort of a spiral effect where it's just your mind is just constantly being drained by that course. And that's not a good thing, because you got to sort of be positive, regardless of the outcomes. Again, I can speak from experience. I got in the 60s for my first midterm, or maybe it was the high 50s. And I thought it was the end of the world. But after a couple of days, I was realized, well, what's the point of being all sad about this? Just do what you can for the next one. And I did well in the final. So I'm satisfied, although it's my lowest mark, but I'm pretty happy with what I ended up with. So I would just say, relax. It is what it is. Just try your best and just try to integrate yourself in doing fun things.
In my first year, I think I de-stressed by having a lot of late night ice creams. In hindsight, that contributed to my freshman 15 that I have not lost to this day. Another thing I did was I went to some of the events that was held by my Don for my residents. So I remember going to a grilled cheese night and going to a spa night. And we also had this what was it? Like this fish that was like our residence pet that went from people's rooms like every week. So for the week that my roommate and I had the fish, we just had like late night feeding fish session, which was surprisingly really de-stressing. And then eventually, after I went past first year, I moved to somewhere near Waterloo Park. So I started taking long walks in the nice weather. There's a lot of fluffy llamas there, and there's like miniature sheep, and then it's a really nice place to walk around. So these are some of the things I did.
Fun fact, Lucy and I lived in the same residence building. Um, our fish's name was Ferdinand, named after the previous president of the University of Waterloo. And I do remember those lovely spa nights. Um, moving on. So as a first year, you might not know a lot about the services and resources provided by the university in general, but as you go on, you kind of learn about them. So what's the one service you think would have really helped you in your first year?
Uh, yeah, sort of as a joke, I went to the medical clinic on campus because it was so cold one day and I forgot to wear earmuffs. So they saved my life. It was more of a figurative language there. But yeah, in terms of specific clubs, like or facilities or offerings, I can't even remember the name of it, but there was just within MC, the main building, and it was on, I don't even know what floor. I haven't been there in forever, but it was where coffee and donuts is. See, I don't even know what it's
Math
called.
C&D,
Yeah, CND.
third floor.
Third floor. Yeah, it was somewhere over there. And for some of the algebra courses or something, I went for help, and it really helped me. Now, sometimes I also went with another friend as well, because I didn't really like doing these things on my own. I wanted to at least know at least one person coming with me. So I would usually go with a friend who also needs help, and we would just sit there and ask like TAs for questions about certain assignments or lecture material. And again, it was so long ago, I feel. I can't remember the exact name of that club or the facility, but yeah, there's definitely a lot of links to sort of that could be provided to help with that.
So for myself, I experience a frequent back pain, neck pain from looking down too much and like studying too much. So one thing I wish I knew was that there's like this place, it's called SLS Chirotherapy, but it's something like that. It's in the
SOS
basement.
physiotherapy.
That's the name. So it's in the basement of SLC, and I actually was connected with a massage therapist there who did wonders to my neck and back. And so, like, I don't feel it hurting every time I bend down. And that is covered 80% by your WUSA health insurance. So that's one thing I wish I knew a lot sooner before, so I'd suffered less.
Do you agree? Do you max out your insurance benefits, folks? Dental, health, everything. Well, that's the last question we had. Is there any last minute advice you would like to give to the first years before we wind up this event?
Yeah, no, I'll just say two quick things in terms of farm. I know people in a wide variety, for sure, first year co-op positions, it might be just sort of whatever you can get. And depending on your interests, I know farm students, and Lucy even mentioned this, but I know a couple of people who went into marketing. Some people are fortunate and maybe they already have connections, maybe their parents or a close friend that they sort of help them get into, or family connections, not necessarily parents, that you'd be like, oh, why did that person get such a good job? And I'm sort of at just an average location. Life is sort of just not fair, and it is what it is. So you just deal with what you got. But upper year courses, you have a lot of flexibility to sort of make your own path. So you can get really good co-ops, for example, in investment banking or private equity or hedge funds. I know people in those fields, but also maybe you're interested in actuarial science. So I know some people that are having co-op positions in insurance firms, as an actuarial analyst or in risk management. So literally anything you can think of. And it's not necessarily all about your program. It's about what you're doing on your free time. So if you're doing extracurriculars, but also even using other connections, maybe at these clubs, about sort of textbooks that they can give you, and then you could read these textbooks on your own. Because farm, so yeah, a farm, you don't necessarily learn about valuation. So if you're interested in investing, you'll have to sort of learn that on your own, especially early on. So they're just meet new people, and then you can leverage those people for information. And I'll speak for myself, and I'm sure the rest of the panelists here would be fine with it as well. But definitely reach out if you have any questions. Upper year students can be a huge benefit, and we're always here to help.
My one parting advice is don't care about what other people think. Don't care about what other people think of you. Don't think about what other people's thinking of you, because whatever you're thinking that other people are thinking of you, they're probably not thinking that. I remember when I dropped Math 135, people would ask me, "Hey, why haven't I seen you in class?" And I would make some sort of excuse, and then I just would not admit to anyone that I dropped Math 135 because I was so worried about how people was going to perceive me as a failure. But now that I think about it, it's really dumb. A lot of people take 4 courses, and especially in first year, a lot of people do drop classes. Maybe 4 courses is easier for somebody, especially if they're starting out and trying to adjust to the university life. So you don't have to be ashamed that you are taking 4 courses instead of 5. Maybe you got a bad co-op compared to someone else. Do not be ashamed of that. I want to go into the government after I graduate. I don't want to do stock analysis. I don't even want to get my CFA at this point. And I remember when I was younger that whenever people are asking me what co-op jobs I got, I would be ashamed to admit that I went into the government. But now I just don't care anymore. People really don't judge you, especially as you go up through the years. People don't judge you. If they judge you, then they are terrible. Don't associate yourself with them.
Yeah, literally 5 seconds to sort of add on to that. Yeah, do what interests you. I remember even personally, people always talking about investment banking and stuff like that, and a lot of it just because people are like, oh, it's very prestigious. But ultimately, if you're looking at it, and even for myself, I'm not even interested in that. So usually you tell people you are, just because they'd be like, oh, maybe be like, oh, we're interested in the same thing. But when you get older, you mature and you'll be like, okay, well, that's actually not even something I'm interested in. And you worry less about what other people are doing and more about what makes you happy. So, yeah.
I think I can totally get behind that last advice given by both of you. Well, thanks for joining us today, both the audience and like obviously thanks to our great panelists for speaking about their experiences. And hopefully this was helpful for you all, even if you're seeing it later at YouTube. We tried to cover a lot of broad topics, answer some of your burning questions, and hope you enjoyed it. And that's all we have. Have a good day, folks.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.